The card says Hidden Empire, but he's more than that. His name is Shawn Edwards, and he has for many, many, many years been one of the faces and voices that I saw every other week for some 15 years, doing the junkets in Los Angeles, New York, wherever they happen to be. Where's home now?
Home is Kansas City, Missouri, but I spend very little time there because I'm here in LA, still working as a film critic, but actually learning the other side of the road and trying to learn the process of actually making movies.
You want to be a producer?
I would love to be producer, writer, hopefully someday director, just completely 100% involved in the process of creating content and making movies.
Okay, we're here at this theater. I have no idea where I am at.
It's a landmark. It's the old Landmark Theater, but they've turned it into an official sanctioned FYC, for your consideration, event space that's sort of co-sponsored by the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences.
It makes perfect sense that you are one of the people responsible for the celebration of black cinema, because you have always talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lifelong passion. I mean, I grew up watching a lot of movies we're celebrating tonight. I studied them in school, and I sort of just have a passion for it. And a lot of these movies and filmmakers, they deserve the credit that they've never received, and this is a great platform to do that.
I remember the pressure that sometimes you were under, because when we saw black cinema, you were the only black face coming in to talk to them, and they wanted to know. They wanted to know what you thought.
No, that's very true. No, I've been doing this for more than 20 years, and so the industry sort of changed. But it's kind of funny, Eddie Murphy received the Lifetime Achievement Award, and he sort of spoke about the same sort of thing, how when he first started making movies, there was very little support from the black side on the film criticism part of the business. And that was true when I sort of started 20 years ago. There was really no one to look up to. You had Siskel and Ebert, who had a national platform, but there weren't many other people who looked like me, so I was sort of like in uncharted territory, trying to find my way. And like you mentioned, it did put a lot of pressure when you're the only one that has the same background, and you're watching a film about the black experience.
And you're talking to their community.
Right, exactly. It does put a little bit of pressure, and you want to, as a film critic, you have to see all the movies, so you don't ever want to slant one way, or you don't want to underslant, or, sometimes you'd always want to have to be like the explainer in chief, but it happens that way. But now, things are starting to change. There's a lot more diversity. There's more inclusion, more representation. So it's the last 20 years have seen sort of like a big change in the world of film criticism, thanks to the explosion of social media, online platforms, and just, I think, a general changing in people's attitude.
It's a celebration of Black Film Awards in Beverly Hills. Shawn Edwards, film critic, is talking to me. How did this come about?
It was an idea I've been talking about. Ironically, nothing ever happens overnight. It's an idea I've been talking about for 2 or 3 years. Finally convinced the organization it was something that a lot of people would support in terms of the membership, in terms of the movie studios, in terms of the talent. Was able to come up with a sort of like a concise plan on how we would like to see the event roll out, and then put it in the hands of the organization that has the mechanisms and the networks and the contacts to kind of like pull a thing of this magnitude together.
And then one of those films that was made started to draw everybody's attention, and all of a sudden the light was fully shone on black cinema. What was that turning point, do you think?
I think there are a couple of turning points. I think the Oscar Micheaux, who's considered the godfather of black cinema, definitely created the platform. But I think the modern day turning point might have been what Sidney Poitier did with his films, which led to the explosion of the blaxploitation era in the late 60s, early 70s, which was kicked off by Melvin Van Peebles. And then Spike Lee in the 80s really opened up a lot of people's eyes to the advent of a black person telling his own story, making his own movies. And then, 2013 through now has just been like an explosion of stories about the black experience, because studios are starting to greenlight more projects about the storytelling of blacks. And then the streaming platform with Netflix and Apple TV and Disney Plus has really allowed a lot more filmmakers to tell their stories.
So now, what do you think the effect of Eddie's Dolomite film is going to have, do you think?
I think it's going to be incredible. I think a film like Dolomite sort of piggybacks off of what happened with Hidden Figures a few years ago, where you're going to get these untold stories that very few people know about in terms of the mainstream. They're going to get told and made and turned into film and cinema. And, somebody as big and powerful as Eddie Murphy having success with Dolomite is definitely going to pave the way for other little-known stories about people who've done great things all over the world to be told.
So your timing
No, timing's right. Well,
Your timing is-
Well, everything. This business is 100% about timing.
Yeah.
So
you being here, come
no,
on.
I still like watching movies and critiquing movies and telling people about movies. And right now I'm studying the art of filmmaking. So I'm always the same. We just want to hopefully make this an annual event, and all the honorees tonight seem very, 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 very happy to receive the award, and they all delivered emotional, engaging speeches about their plight and their experiences in this industry. So hopefully we can keep doing this on an annual basis and have more and more people get to share their story.
I got to go find Carrie and talk about Harriet.
Yeah, please talk about Harriet. It's an amazing movie.
It's an amazing movie.
Yeah, but thanks. This has been a great night.
Congratulations.
No, thank you.
Card that Shawn Edwards has handed me is Senior Marketing Specialist at Hidden Empire Group, but he's also one of the very best film critics of the Critics' Choice Association. He has always been the champion for black films in the U.S., and he helped to organize this celebration of black cinema tonight in Beverly Hills. And one of those being honored tonight is Cassie Lemons, who for 3 decades has been a director, a writer, a professor, a leader in black cinema. And she has given us Harriet, a film about Harriet Tubman. Cassie, I started to write your credits down, old school, ink, paper. I ran out of ink. I got to the word professor. How much is that a part of your life now?
It's a huge part of my life, and it's actually been a part of my life for quite a while. I started teaching, I think my first gig was UCLA. I've taught at UCLA, USC. I think I started at USC, then UCLA. I've taught at AFI, and for the past 7 years, I've been at NYU Grad Film School. Well, actually, I started NYU undergrad, but my gig now, I'm a full professor at NYU Grad Film School.
Teaching specifically?
I teach directing, and sometimes screenwriting and directing the actor.
I've spent a lot of time, half of my life, on film sets. And I seem to think you can tell the directors who have instinct. I mean, everybody takes classes, but some have instinct for not what's on the like. I'm thinking of Clint Eastwood, who never had a monitor.
Yeah.
He looked at his cameraman and said, "Do we have it?" And the cameraman said, "Yes, we do," and they moved on.
Yes, and he's also watching, and he knows what he's seeing.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what I try and teach my students, how to recognize what's happening in front of them, how to be focused enough to recognize alchemy, to recognize magic when you see it.
What were your thoughts about this gathering of and honoring of black cinema?
I think it's amazing. Really, when you think about how long we've been doing it, of course, how far we've come, but also how long it's been going on. I mean, Oscar Micheaux made a ton of films, and he was like a guerrilla filmmaker. He was scrappy, go steal locations, and he made movie stars. And it's amazing how much work we've done, how huge a contribution to cinema we've made, and also how far we've come. And when you look at the work that's being made recently, and just such diverse material, every film is so different from each other, and so many filmmakers, so many women filmmakers. And of course this wonderful, OG, we've got our OG filmmakers of color, we've got our new and emerging filmmakers of color. It's great.
We're in Los Angeles. We're in Beverly Hills, actually, at the celebration of black cinema. And one of those being honored tonight is Cassie Lemons, who for 3 decades has been a director, a writer, a professor, a leader in black cinema. And she has given us Harriet, a film about Harriet Tubman. In your travels, when did you hear the story of Harriet Tubman? Who told it to you?
I think I learned it in school somewhat. I learned a little bit about it, and I think my mother filled me in. And I realize now that my mother's main motto was a Harriet Tubman motto, but I don't think I knew it at the time. Or if she told me, I forgot it. Which was, if you see a barrier, keep going. Just keep going, Don't let anything stop you. And that's very much inspired by Harriet.
In making the film, were there surprises in there, things that you didn't know?
Yeah, there was a lot I didn't know. Actually, it was surprising how much I found out. I think I knew kind of the rudimentary Harriet Tubman that you're taught, that you can read in one page. But really delving deep into many, many, many hundreds of pages of scholarly research about her, I learned so much, and stuff that was obvious, in fact, that it's quite shocking that we don't know. For instance, how important her spirituality was. I think we learned that she's religious, but not so much this one-on-one conversation that she believed she was having with a higher power. That was really inspiring to me when I realized this was our Joan of Arc story.
Yeah.
You know, that this was somebody who believed that she was guided and who was so certain of it that it contributed to her fearlessness. She thought, she said, you know, she was on a mission, and she said, when God is done with me, he'll let them take me. Mm-hmm. And I found that very inspirational, and also just like the idea of resistance. Somehow we don't learn it as a resistance story, you know. But in the escape, it's not just escape. It's a fight. It's being engaged in being willing to die for freedom and being willing to die for others to have freedom. You know.
Did she talk to you?
All the time. And
did you talk to her?
All the time. All the time. I spoke to her so often, and really very deliberately invoked her, and maybe that's a writer thing, you know, or maybe it's me. I've certainly heard of other writers doing that, but it became very, very important to me. And I started off just saying her name at night and first thing in the morning, and then really trying to bring her. And then it got to be, it evolved into a conversation that we were having. And so, you know, Harriet felt she was having a conversation with God, and I felt I was having a conversation with Harriet.
We're in Los Angeles at the celebration of Black cinema. And one of those being honored tonight is Cassie Lemons, who for 3 decades has been a director, a writer, a professor, a leader in Black cinema. And she has given us Harriet, a film about Harriet Tubman. This is a simple question, but it has weight to it, and I think that is, what is her legacy today?
I mean, I think her legacy are freedom fighters. Her legacy are people that are willing to go the distance. The civil rights movement is her legacy. The end of slavery was her legacy. You know, Reconstruction was her legacy, brief though it was, but really the resistance. I would say the civil rights movement has been Harriet's legacy, really resisting the status quo. You know, resisting and being a force of change and being willing to bravely face anything with God in your heart and being willing to die for freedom. I think that Martin Luther King is her legacy, and all of the freedom fighters that have lived since then.
Did she have a diary? Did we find notes?
Well, you know, she couldn't read or write, and she never learned. She had a different type of literacy, you know, but she did not read or write.
So there was no one around her writing, making notes?
Yes, there were many people around her making notes, but some of them are not necessarily reliable. You know, they made her language more folksy. They tried to make her tale more appealing to the people of that era. You know, what was going to appeal to the white readers of that era. And so they're not necessarily as reliable as what really reading all the scholarly works and honestly looking between the lines and trying to fill the discrepancies between scholarly works. But there's now very, very good research on her. Very good research and very good people doing that research. Kate Clifford Lawson. I mean, at this point, we can pretty much name every person she rescued. Yeah. You know, so it's really come a long way from, I think, Sarah Bruford, who first, I think that's her name, who first wrote the first biography that's very kind of folksy, and you can see that she's embellishing quite a bit.
And how did she survive?
Well, I mean, she says it was God, and she was guided. I think at the very least she had perfect instincts, you know what I mean? Like, she had perfect instincts. She knew when danger was coming. She could tell which way to turn. And she was incredibly, incredibly brave. Mm-hmm. Kate Clifford Lawson doesn't like me to say fearless because we all have fear, and Harriet had fear. But she was incredibly brave, and she was able to overcome her fear with courage. And so that's why I talk about it a lot, you know, that having courage, letting your courage be bigger than your fear, be greater than your fear.
Cassie Lemons was given an award tonight in celebration of her work in black cinema at the Celebration of Black Cinema in Los Angeles. Her latest film is Harriet. It's the story of the black leader and standard bearer for civil rights in the United States of America. It's called Harriet, and it's about Harriet Tubman. I wonder what they teach about Harriet now in school these days.
Well, hopefully something a little bit more comprehensive, but even my children, who've been in school fairly recently, they're in college now. My son's a young adult, he's in the movie. Still, we're very, very surprised at what they learned in watching Harriet.
And the last question is, I know you might have made this for yourself, for your own reasons, but along the way, did you think about who else you were leaving this for?
Absolutely, more than any film I've ever made. I made this for as wide an audience as I could possibly get to understand Harriet and to feel that they had access to her.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
How do you feel about the award?
Oh, God, I'm thrilled, especially with this group of artists. I mean, it's just thrilling. I'm super happy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cassie Lemons, who has been making films for some 3 decades. She's a director, a writer, an actor, a performer, a professor. And she has directed a film called Harriet about the amazing civil rights pioneer, Harriet Tubman.